highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
Randwick, a suburb of Sydney, is located 6 kilometres southeast of the central business district.
During the first half of the 19th century, the area was isolated from Sydney by swamps and sandhills. Only a few European settlers lived there.
In 1824, one of the earliest land grants was made to Captain Francis Marsh.
A hazardous racecourse over hills and gullies, known as the Sandy Racecourse or Old Sand Track, operated from 1833 until 1838.
English bounty migrant Simeon Henry Pearce bought land from Marsh and called his property Randwick, after his hometown in Gloucestershire, England. He created a market garden and built Blenheim House, which was completed in 1848. The first Anglican church service in the district was held there. Today it is owned by Randwick Council, who intend to transform it into an arts centre, performance space and pocket park.
George Hooper purchased land for market gardens and orchards. In 1848 he built Hooper Cottage, a small stone building still standing in Fig Tree Avenue.
In the 1850s, Pearce's market garden was subdivided. Stone cottages were built to accommodate his workers. The less fortunate lived in makeshift shanties. The settlement became known as Struggle Town.
Pearce chose a site for a church, schoolhouse and parsonage. The first temporary St Jude's Church of England and schoolhouse opened in 1858. The present church opened in 1865. The tower was heightened to accommodate a clock. Transepts were added in 1889. The rectory was built 1870.
An area was set aside for burial grounds.
The St Jude's Church of England School Hall, built in 1899, served as the St Jude's Day School, today a childcare and parish centre.
Destitute children from central Sydney were relocated to an asylum for the relief of destitute children, which opened in 1858.
The Catherine Hayes Hospital was built in 1870 for inmates of the asylum. It was named after a famous Irish singer who donated funds for its construction.
The residence of the superintendent of the asylum is now an administration building.
In 1915, the asylum was needed for servicemen returning from World War I. The children were dispersed and the sandstone buildings were transformed into a hospital. When the heir to the British throne visited Australia in 1920, it was named the Prince of Wales Hospital.
Today, the hospital site incorporates Sydney Children's Hospital and the Royal Hospital for Women.
St Jude's Well opened in 1858. When it dried up, St Jude's Fountain was built over a spring on an opposite corner. It supplied water for horses and people.
When the New South Wales government passed the Municipalities Act, Randwick was the first suburb to apply for municipal status. It was approved in February 1859.
The council borough chambers, built in 1862, were purchased by St Jude's Church in 1895 and used as a verger's residence.
A town hall was built in 1882. The domed clock tower above the central portico was a later addition. Today, modern buildings accommodate the council chambers and administrative offices.
Bishop's Court, the official residence of the Church of England Bishop of Sydney, was built in 1859. In 1911, the bishop's residence was moved to Darling Point. The property was taken over by the Sisters of the Good Samaritan. It was destroyed by fire in 1924.
From 1859, John Grice operated the first Randwick to Sydney horse omnibus and mail service. Grice's general store became the Coach and Horses Hotel. Adjacent to the hotel were pleasure gardens, which contained a bowling green, menagerie, swinging boats, skittle alleys, quoit grounds, croquet lawns, and a dancing room. Extensively added to, the hotel continues to operate today.
The Australian Jockey Club approached the government in order to re-establish regular racing at the old sandy course. They secured the land, improved the old track, built new running rails and a grandstand to seat 700. The first race meeting was held in 1860 with a first-day crowd of over 6,000.
Workers' houses and stables were established. Struggletown became the centre of the racing industry.
The race course encouraged development in the area. The greatest period of growth began after the introduction of steam trams in 1881.
Trams were a common sight at the Randwick racecourse. The terminus included 6 platforms, 7 sidings, 2 overpasses, ticket offices, signal boxes, and 6 sets of tracks that formed a large loop into the course from Anzac Parade. The racecourse specials were the largest operation of the tramway department.
The tramway workshops, a huge industrial site, employed many men in the construction and maintenance of Sydney's trams. Established in 1881, the workshops closed 1961.
During World War I, workshop employees were involved in the production of heavy artillery. After the workshops closed, the yards became the last resting place for many obsolete trams. The site was later converted to a bus depot. The eastern end remains in use as a state transit depot. The western side is part of the University of New South Wales and Randwick TAFE.
Today, the Sydney Light Rail operates from Circular Quay to Randwick.
Newmarket House began as John Dillon's Newmarket Hotel in 1861. In 1906, the Inglis family moved their bloodstock operation to the site. The house was purchased by the Montessori Academy in 2020 to become a childcare centre.
The big stable was built in 1887 behind the Newmarket Hotel. During World War II, it was used as a detention barracks, and after the war, a Laminex factory. In the mid-1980s, it was restored and returned to its original use. Today, as part of the Newmarket residential precinct, the stable has been designated for use by the community. The sales ring has become an interactive playground.
The Jane Street Church, completed in 1887, was a mission hall for St Jude's Anglican Church. From the First World War until the 1940s, it was called St Faith's Church. During the 1970s to the mid-1980s, the building housed the Jane Street Theatre, now a private home.
The post office, completed in 1897, is now owned by the Eastern Suburbs Rugby League Club, which has donated the building for use by the Ted Noffs Foundation. The current post office is located in the Royal Randwick Shopping Centre.
In 1888, Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Church opened on Avoca Street.
Ventnor in the church grounds was built 1858 by Edward Dawson. It was bought by George Kiss, auctioneer of Kiss Horse Bazaar, whose family resided there until 1963, when it was sold to the church.
The Presbyterian Church was built in 1890. A single-storey Sunday school connected to the church was completed in 1903. The second floor of the school was completed in 1936.
The Jubilee Fountain on the corner of Allison Road and Avoca Street was erected in 1909 to commemorate the Jubilee of the incorporation of the municipality of Randwick.
The spot, at the intersection of Perouse Road and St Paul Street, was originally known as Irish Town, a poor working-class area dominated by Irish Catholics.
The 1937 Art Deco Ritz Theatre is still thriving. An additional 3 theatres were added to the original site in 1997 and a further 2 in 2001.
The 1930s Masonic Temple is now a Pan-Arcadian house.
A vacant space opposite the asylum, where most of Randwick's early roads crossed or originated, was called the High Cross. The area around High Cross contains many historic buildings.
The Royal Hotel was built in 1887. The Volunteer Fire Brigade was stationed there before the official Fire Brigade headquarters were established in 1908 on the avenue.
Edith and Essex, built in 1890, are now part of Sydney Lodge's group of properties.
The Odeon was originally the Randwick Theatre, which opened in 1921. The cinema was taken over by Greater Union Theatres in the 1940s. Closing in 1980, it was demolished and replaced by a shopping centre.
The Star and Garter Inn, circa 1859, was built by William Ellis, a Randwick alderman. In 1869, it was acquired by Captain Thomas Watson, who added a tower to obtain views of Botany Bay.
The Captain Cook statue, erected in 1874, was paid for by funds organised by Captain Watson.
Goldring House, built in 1886, consists of 4 business premises and dwellings.
Built in 1898, 2 large Victorian semi-detached houses named Karana and Hygeia became Randwick Lodge. Today, the Lurleen, named after a luxury ship.
A sandstone cenotaph stands in High Cross Park. Within the structure is a parchment roll inscribed with the names of more than 4,000 First World War veterans.
Randwick Public School opened in 1883. It became a superior school in 1913 and an intermediate high school in 1920.
During the 1950s, separate boys and girls high schools were established on Avoca Street. Adjacent to these is the Rainbow Street Public School.
From 1966 to 2001, a co-educational high school, Randwick North, was on the site of the present Randwick Public and Centennial Park schools.
A Roman Catholic girls' school, the Brighton College, opened in 1901.
Marcellin College for boys dates from 1923.
High-rise development began in the 1960s. Today, these buildings stand side by side with those of past eras.
Newgall Hall in Milford Street, built from local sandstone, is a Gothic-style mansion designed by Mortimer Lewis in 1853 for Alexander MacArthur, a shipping magnate and MLA. Other notable residents have included the German and French consuls prior to World War I. After the war, it was used as a hospital for Australian military personnel.
In 1865, Aston Lodge was built for merchant and Randwick alderman John Watkins. During the 1890s, the Loreto Convent conducted a girls' school there. After being purchased by the Little Sisters of the Poor, a chapel and the large novitiate were built. The Emmanuel School now occupies the site.
Sandgate was built in 1879 by Simeon Pearce as part of a row of 5 investment properties along Belmore Road. It has also been known as Kilkerran and Felton. In the early 1920s, it was used as a Red Cross facility for war veterans. The property, now owned by Randwick City Council, is leased for commercial purposes.
Gordon Terrace, built in 1885, consists of 13 attached dwellings, one of the few examples of row housing in Randwick.
Brighton Terrace on Mears Avenue was a terrace of 5 gentlemen's residences built in 1886.
Montrose, a Victorian house built in 1887 on Allison Road, has been converted to a retail building.
Rathven on St Mark's Road was built in 1887 by George Raffin, a builder from Scotland. From 1927 until 1976, it was occupied by Sydney Grammar School. It is now a private residence.
Carlton, in Allison Road, a large Italianate 2-storey villa, was built about 1890, almost opposite the racecourse. Alfred Geary, a horse racing official and bookmaker, was its first resident.
9 large 3-storey terraces on the avenue known as Avonmore Terrace were built in 1889-90 on land purchased from the trustees of St Jude's Church.
The central one, the first and largest, was built as a family home by John Walsh, a building and railway contractor. He continued building and renting out the adjoining terraces. Number 34 is currently a boutique hotel. The others are privately owned.
On Avoca Street, Torquay, Ilfracombe and Clovelly.
Built around 1905, Verona. Amphion and Anarchis in Allison Road are a group of 3 Edwardian villas.
Next door is Rothsay, built in 1939, an example of the Art Deco ocean liner style, which was popular during the interwar years.
In 1907, Father Archibald Shaw bought Ascot on Utrecht Street and Arkina on Avoca Street to provide rest houses for missionaries. Shaw, a radio enthusiast, experimented with wireless transmission and established a wireless company. A factory between the 2 houses produced radio equipment. During World War I, the factory was used by the Navy for munitions production.
Arkina was purchased by the Commonwealth for defence purposes. In January 1924, Wing Commander L.T. Wackett established the first Royal Australian Air Force experimental station. Wackett used nearby Ascot as a design office and residence, and Arkina housed the engineers. Wackett's world-class amphibious biplanes, Widgeon, were produced in the former naval workshops.
Barrett House was the home of cinema pioneers Franklin and Mabel Barrett, who developed and edited 15 silent pictures in their home between 1919 and 1926. The house, bequeathed to Randwick City Council, has been converted into a showcase for sustainable living.
Glenmervyn on Coogee Bay Road was constructed in 1924 for meat supplier Thomas A. Field. It was presented to the Australian Red Cross Society in 1941 for use as a convalescent home for World War II servicemen. In 1946, it was leased to Sydney Legacy for their wards. In 1973, Legacy handed the property back to the Red Cross.
Gower Galties on Coogee Bay Road is a 4-storey apartment block built by H.A. Taylor in 1940. It is distinctive for the curved walls and windows in the Art Deco style.
Javerna on Cook Street is a 3-storey Art Deco block of flats.
Today, Randwick, synonymous with horse racing, is a busy residential, professional and commercial centre.
If you have enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Coming soon, Haberfield, the suburb which was promoted as being slumless, laneless and publess. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverwordpress.com.